Hello, fellow embroidery enthusiasts. Welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be doing something just a little bit different. It's not embroidery per se, but it is something that will take your work a step up, and it gives it such a beautiful finished look to it. However, I mean, you would have to increase the price of whatever you're selling your stuff for because it does take time. However, it really does just give this beautiful finished look to things. You can do it on key fobs, right? So you can see the sides here. And then here's one I haven't done. So I can just give you a view of what that looks like. So not done, done with white gloss, done with black matte. Okay, and as far as the key fobs go, it is actually quite easy to go around the fobs. It doesn't take that much skill, and it's quite easy to hold them as you're doing it. Now, if you're going to be doing something a little bit longer, say like a strap or something, then you're going to have to take into account that it really is long, and when you're holding it, it's kind of floppy. So you're likely going to have to do one side of that item and then wait till it dries and then do the other side of the item. But for something this size, it can be done all at once. And I just want to show you what we have here. We have 3 different types of kind of finishes that are done with the edge paint. Now this one here on the very end, let's see if we can get a good view of that. This one here on the end is just done with the 2 base coats and then 2 layers of the paint. And there's no top coat on it. This one here is also done with the 2 layers of the base coat, 2 layers of paint, edge paint, and then this one has a beautiful gloss on the top of it to finish. And this one on the end here, again, has the 2 layers of base, 2 layers of paint, but the one on the end has a matte on top of it. So I'm just going to show you the difference this way between, this is just the basic one, that's just the edge coat with the matte. So you can see there really is quite a difference in those. All right, so we are going to get started with getting these done with our edge paint. So let's go ahead and learn this process. So the things we need to get started with this process, we need an edge paint, and there are quite a few different manufacturers of edge paints. This just happens to be the one that I use and like, but there are lots of different leather edge paints that you can purchase. I just don't know how well that they're going to work on vinyl, but this one seems to work fairly well on the vinyl. So this one is by Embroidery, and it comes in single bottles. You can get bottles that are this size, or you can get just the single little bottles as well. They also have a nice set, so if you're just starting out and you want to try all kinds of different colors, then they just have all the different colors here that you can try in a nice set. So I do have that. Now the thing is, when you're doing the painting, it actually is nicer to have the smaller bottles, because when you're dipping, you don't have to go as far into the container. But that's just a personal preference. As well, there is different types of paints that you can buy, and this one is just a basic, so you can kind of see it here, it's just a basic edge paint, whereas you can also get one that is called a dense edge paint. So this is not dense edge paint, this is a dense base coat, but you can also get the dense paint. Now the dense paint works better when you're using one of the rollers that comes. It's a roller that sits on a table and then you roll your piece across it. The dense works probably better for that, whereas when you're putting it on the edge of your vinyl, then it's nicer to use one of the basic edge paints because it has a bit more, I'd say, fluidity to it. It's kind of a little bit like, to make an analogy, it's kind of a little bit like flooding cookies, if you've ever done sugar cookies, where you like it to be just the right thinness so that it kind of spreads nicely across. And I do find that the basic edge paint does that quite nicely so that you can build up a couple of layers without all the lumps. So we have the paint that we need, so that's the basic paint. And then you also need a base coat for it. Now you really do need the base coat for the vinyl. You might not necessarily need the base coat for a leather, because you can sand the leather down and you can get it a lot smoother before you start putting the edge paint on. However, with the vinyl, you just can't do that. So it really is best to use one of the base coats with the vinyl before you start trying to put on the edge coat. Okay, so I like the one in the little bottle. And then also for the topping, you can add a top coat to the outside of it, and I have a matte for that, and I also have a gloss. Let me see, it is this one. So I also have a protecting gloss that can go on. Okay, so this one gives it a nice shiny edge if you like that kind of thing. And so we are going to start with the base coat. So I'm going to leave that out here. And then the next thing that we're going to need to do this is you need a roller. So that's why I like the size of this bottle, because when you're putting the roller in, right, you don't have to stick it all the way in as much. When you put it in the big ones, you got to stick it way down, and then you're getting a lot of the paint and the base coat and everything on the edge of this to clean off. And well, I just don't find that as nice, but you can use one of the bigger ones and put it in a little dish if you prefer. So the way we put this on is we use one of these rollers. So some people just use one of these and they just kind of like tap it on. Some leather workers do that as well, but it's a lot easier if you have something that goes along the edge and kind of just rolls it on. As well, this fills with the paint or the edge base coat here as well, and it just helps you apply an even coat much easier than kind of just taking this and tapping it along the way. Now there are differences in these ones. I decided to try a cheap version at first, thinking, oh, there can't be that much difference, but I'm sorry to tell you that there is. So this one I basically just use for this at the end now, because it just is so hard to roll and it just doesn't flow. But then I got a better quality one and it just easily rolls across everything, right? So you need one of those. And then you need something to clean it off with. So I use water and just a toothbrush, because you want to get in here and clean out all the grooves. As well, you could use a pin or something nice and sharp just to help get everything out of there, because it dries fairly quickly, this base coat. And then another thing that you're going to need is some sandpaper. And I use a 220 grit here, so you can see 220 grit. This is just a piece of duct tape on the back, which just actually helps it from disintegrating so fast. And then what you need to do is have the grit, I would say no more than 800, probably even no more than 500 for what we're doing. But you don't want the grit to be too fine, because then you're burnishing the edges instead of actually just sanding them enough to add the next coats to make it a smooth enough base. All right, so these are the few things. Oh, as well, sometimes people like to use a lighter just to give the fluidity of the coat. Helps it spread out just a little bit, but that's easier to do on the straight edges, not as easy to do on some of these rounded edges. All right, so those are the tools we need. So just some basic tools. And then there's a few steps that take place with this. So as I did show, you've got 2 coats on these ones, and it gives a nice finish. You know, it just really finishes the edge. So what you need to do is, I recommend doing 2 of the base coats on the vinyl and then 2 of the edge painting coats. So what we have here, just to show you, okay, is just a variety that I have done and that we're going to work on. And this one here, this first one here, let's see if we can see it. This one here just has 1 coat of the base coat edging on it, okay? So you can still see that it's a little smoother, but not all the gaps are quite as filled as they should be. And then this one has a little bit more of an opaque look to it. And this is 2 coats of the base coat. And then after that, you can start and you can add the edge coat paint itself. And this one here just has 1 layer of the edge coat on it. And if that's good enough for you, then, you know, you can leave it that way. Not sure how good we're seeing that here, but I prefer having the double coat. I just think it looks a lot nicer, a lot more finished to have the 2 coats to it. All right, and so one of the things that you really have to be aware of when you're doing edge painting, you need a straight edge. So if you've cut your vinyl and it's kind of like on a bit of an angle, you're going to have a little bit of a harder time just getting it nice and smooth. So the edge coat, or the base should help with that. But it really is important to get the edges just very perpendicular and straight, not with your scissors kind of going either way or one sticking out a bit more. It's quite difficult to put on when you have done that. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to put the base coat on. And we're going to just do it on this one that has a single coat on it already. Okay, so I have the 1 coat on here, and the best thing to do in between the coats is use the sandpaper just to give you a little bit more of a place for the base coat to stick, as well as smooth out any of the places that might be up a little bit. All right, so now that we have got that all done, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put on the base coat. Now it's very, very important that you do not shake the bottle. Do not shake the bottles. I know there are some people that tell you when you're going to mix it all up that you should just shake the bottle up and down. Don't do that. And the reason you don't do that is because you're going to build bubbles inside the bottle. And that is a big no-no. You will have bubbles on the edge of your finished products, and it's just not nice. So when you start out and you have to open these, all right, there is a little piece on the bottom that you have on the small ones. You just unscrew it, and then there is a cap in here. One of the reasons I like this thing now. So you got to take your little cap out. And then if you have to mix it up, because they do require a mix, I just use a skewer, okay? So you just put it in, you gently mix it around, and then you just wipe this off on the edge. Like I said, do not shake these bottles, all right? So the first thing that we have to do is we need to dip our little piece inside the bottle, and this is why I like these smaller bottles. So you need, if there's too much, you just tap it on the side. So you get your nice coating on here, and then it's just a nice little roll on, okay? And it's actually quite quick. And you want to do thinner coats. You don't want to build up the thickest coat that you can. So you just want to roll it on, just like that. And if you get any out here, just wipe it off with your finger. That's typically what I do. All right, so here we have the second coating of the edge coat. And so now we have to let it dry. Now the instructions say you can let it dry for about half an hour, but I let it dry for quite a bit longer than that because I like to sand it down, and you want to make sure that it is set really well. So one of the ways that I put it down is I've just got this piece of cardboard and I've just put these little higher pieces on it just to make it a little bit easier so that the edges don't hit the bottom. So I just put it on that and then let it dry. All right, so now that we have the second one done, we need to just wash this off a little bit here. So you can see how easy it is just to clean that up to start on my next one. Just make sure there's no water left in there. All right. And now we need to work on this layer here. And so when you're sanding it, you want to just be very gentle, because if you sand it too rough, then you're just going to start peeling off the base coat, and that is not what you want. But you do want it a little bit sanded just to make it a little bit smoother. So I just really just lightly sand the edge. Okay, so now we are actually ready to do the painting coat for this. And you can do it any of the colors that you choose. This one here has this kind of like a greenish color here, but I kind of just like the black on the side of it. So again, do not shake these colors. If you need to, you put this in and then you just mix it around, okay? And then again, it's the same thing with this. And so as you can see, the more down you go, the farther you have to stick it in, and then that's where you get all the color on here. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing on here. And again, it's just the same process. So I had to go back and forth on this one a few times because I didn't put enough paint on my roller. And one of the other things that can help flood this a little bit is a little bit of heat on the end. So there is that, but that's why you have to make sure you have the right amount of paint on your roller. So if you get a little bit of paint on there where you don't want it, I just wipe my finger, and this one has a lot cleaner edge on it just because I had the right amount of paint. So we'll see how the other side is looking now. So there are a few dots here I don't like, but I'm going to try and fix those with the second pass. All right, and this one is now done for now. And again, it has to go, and it has to go rest and solidify itself, dry up. And again, that's somewhere around the half-hour mark, they say, but I still leave it for longer. I usually leave it for a couple of hours, and then I come back. And so now that we have the first one done, this is what it looks like after you have the first one done. And as you can see, I'm not sure if you can, well, we'll think you can see, the coat is not quite as smooth as it could be, right? The side's a bit smoother, but I'm going to add a second coat to help with that. And that's where it's like flooding. You want to do more layers than one big thick layer. And this one also needs a little bit of sandpaper between it. And it's much harder to get in here with the sandpaper, so you just have to be careful, because if you go too hard, you're just going to rip the paint off. Okay, just going to wipe my little dust off, and now we're going to paint up the second layer of this one. And it's the same as the first one. You want to make sure that you have enough of the paint on here so that it rolls nicely and that you're not trying to dab it around, because the dabbing is what gives you those terrible bubbles as well. All right, so here we go. All right, so there we have the second coat done, and a little bit much on this spot. Here we have, gosh, I hope we can see this, the second coat done. So it's a lot nicer and smoother. And then we have to let that one dry. So put it back over here. And then we can move on to the top coat. So we've got the two choices for the top coat. We can either do the gloss or the extra matte, and I myself prefer the matte, but that is a personal preference. So here we have, let's see if we can see here. So this is just the paint, right? This is just the edge coat with the paint here. Okay, 2 layers. And this one is the edge coat with a top coat of a matte on it. So I'm hoping that we can kind of see that here. Okay, and then this one is the one with the gloss. Right, so there is quite a big difference between the matte and the gloss. It may not be showing up on my screen as much here, but there really is a big difference. So how about I put the gloss on this one so that we can have a look. Okay, I'm just gonna have to clean off my thing again because we have to use the same little tool to put on the coat. All right, so here we go. We're gonna put the edge coat on this one. So I'm going to use this protecting gloss, it's called. And it's literally just the same process. And that is that. And here we go, back again onto the drying rack. All right, and that is literally all there is to it. So it is a quick and easy process when you're doing it, but because you have to wait so long between coats, it is also a long process. But the end result, when you look at it, is really just so much better. And you know, it just takes your projects a step up when you look at the details. I mean, that's what they say, the devil's in the details, right? So the detail edging is just really amazing. If I can remind you what it looks like without the edge being done, right? So here we have an edge that's not done versus the edges that are done. Let's see here. So from this side, you don't notice it quite as much, but you do really see the difference when you look, say, at the top corner, roughly right there. You know, you really see quite a bit of difference on the end product when they have the edge coating on them. All right, so I really do hope that you will give it a shot and that you will try this process and see if you like it. And the thing is, just remember, if you're doing this, then you're going to want to up the price of your goods because it does take long. So you also have to think about that. But I do hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you see that it's really not that difficult. So thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.